Couple minutes past 4 o'clock hour. Again, Rich Quinones here. John McMullen joins us for a couple of moments. Does a good job covering the Birds, of course, for 97.3 ESPN FM. John, good to talk to you, pal. How you been?
Good. Thanks for having me, Rich.
You got it. Let's get into this. All right, so it seems like every other minute there's a conflicting report. Bradford wants out. Bradford wants to stay. Bradford's not going to go anywhere. Howie Roseman has confidence in his quarterback. He'll be the starter week one. First, and I guess your initial reaction when you heard the reports that Bradford was requesting a trade?
Not surprised at all. I think it's human nature when it comes down to the fact I'll talk about he should have realized by the nature of the contract that he signed when he did re-sign with the Eagles that it was clear that they didn't believe he was the long-term future. But there's a big difference from that, Rich, and all of a sudden them going up to number 2 in the draft to concretely, pick your successor. And that's what has differed here. And I think the one aspect of this Howie Roseman hasn't really thought out is the human element and the fact that he assumed Sam Bradford was just going to take his medicine, take his $22 million, be a professional, and teach the guy who was ultimately going to replace him. But it doesn't always work out that way as well as it looks on paper.
You mentioned the human element, and my thought is this. I mean, look, it's the reality of sports, and you're absolutely right. It's kind of a bad look to sign him to a 2-year contract, give him the guaranteed money, and then, oh, by the way, now you're going to peg a number 2 and go after a quarterback. But let me ask you something. Again, it's not the crystal ball theory or opinion, but do you think in that last, say, 24 to 48 hour window when everything kind of went down, something happened where they had an opportunity to trade down with Cleveland to get number 2, that all bets were off, even if they already signed Sam Bradford to a contract extension? So I guess the question is, do you think they saw an opening, they saw an opportunity? Because I was told that they wanted a quarterback and they were looking to draft a quarterback no matter what, even several weeks ago. That's the route they wanted to go, and it just became more appealing when they were able to trade down with the Browns.
Yeah, no, it goes back months, and I think it goes farther than Howie Roseman. I think it comes from the top, and Jeffrey Lurie, who instructed this organization that they need the long-term answer. He kind of realizes they've been going from whatever is Kevin Cobb, Michael Vick, Sam Bradford, Nick Foles. We know all the names, and there hasn't been consistency at that position since Donovan McNabb, and Jeffrey Lurie wants that to stop. And if you think about what they did, and again, it goes back months, they hired Doug Peterson. What is Doug Peterson? He's a former quarterback in this league.
Yep.
The offensive coordinator is Frank Reich, former quarterback in this league. The quarterback's coach, John DeFilippo. He played quarterback in college. All these guys are experts at that particular position, and they were putting together an organization to make this decision as best they can to get it right. It's not to say it's going to work out, but this was their plan from the original aspect of this, and their mentality is dating back to when they were at 13. If they could get up into the top 10, which they did, and then they moved up from 8 to 2, their mentality, and you can like it or dislike it, but they don't feel they're going to be in the top 10 all that often. So they kind of think they had to seize the opportunity. And from everything they got from Doug, who loves Carson Wentz, and Frank Reich and John DeFilippo, they think he's the guy.
Howie Roseman, again, stated earlier today that he expects that Bradford's going to be ready to play when the time comes. And again, we know that it's not these workouts, involuntary workouts. It's a 3-day camp in June, training camp in late July. He says he thinks Sam's going to turn to, be the pro that he is. They believe he'll be under center when the season starts. They have confidence in him. But he really hasn't said that. He really hasn't been so definitive and come out and said, look, or Doug Peterson for that matter, or Jeffrey Lurie for that matter, hey, we're going to draft a quarterback. We're looking in the future. We know Sam's 28. We still think he has a lot of years left. We're going to ride it out with him. We believe in Sam Bradford. He can win us some football games. Now, again, people might read into that. I look at it as I would need to hear that. I don't need the reassurance, but I would want to hear that. And they have not said that yet. Is that an indication that we already know to a man they don't have confidence? But Is that more of an indication of Bradford where he says to himself, look, they don't even have confidence in me. They're not even saying anything on public record. I don't even want to be here anymore.
Well, they've said they want Sam to be the starter this year, but I think the Eagles are trying to serve two masters. I've always said that. They don't want to rebuild. They don't want to be really, really bad and play a rookie quarterback. So what they want to do is win 7 or 8 games with Sam Bradford and then kind of move forward. And also, Rich, you have to look into that 2017 first-round pick. That's very important because you don't want to be a 3-13 team because all of a sudden, if you are, that draft pick is top 5, and that's the last thing the Eagles want to happen. So they don't want Carson Wentz to play this year. They want Sam Bradford. They've been very above board. But Sam's not a dumb guy. Say what you want about him. He's a very bright person. He realizes this organization long-term has no interest in him. So from that aspect, that's what he's upset about. Now, we can all say he's already made $78 million for 78 touchdowns. He's scheduled to make $22 million. You should be a professional, and you probably should. But, again, that's easy to say. And the realistic aspect of it, he'd rather be in Denver or San Francisco or New York with the Jets and have an opportunity, if he plays well, to seize control of that position. That's no longer an option here, no matter what the Eagles say.
Do you? Yeah, and I don't look. I don't know what kind of value you potentially would get from. I don't see the Jets pulling the plug on that. But do you believe that somewhere over the last 24, 48 hours, a said team, insert wherever you want, called Tom Condon and said, "Okay, we're interested in your client. What's it going to take to get him out of Philly?"
I don't necessarily believe that happened. Obviously, he's going to have to take a pay cut if he wants to go anywhere else and pick any city. He's not going to get the money he was scheduled to get here in Philadelphia. And there's also cap ramifications for the Eagles. They're going to take $11 million in dead money if they trade him before June 1st. All of that comes on this year's cap. If it's after, they can split it over 2 years. So that's something that comes into it. So it's going to be difficult for the Eagles to move him and not take a significant cap hit. That said, you talk about voluntary off-season activities. Yeah, technically they're voluntary, but you look around this league, Rich, there's not a starting quarterback that misses any work.
I agree. It's a bad look.
And you know, there's mandatory minicamp. He might show up for that because he obviously wants $22 million, but you know, the media in Philadelphia, we're all going to be there. We're all going to be asking their questions. I can't imagine the Eagles want this to go on as it is going on. So there needs to be a sit-down because they do want Sam Bradford to be their starter for the 2016 season.
We're talking with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, Eagles insider Josh Hennig, Rich Quinones, filling in for Mike Gill. John, I wanted to ask you about Chase Daniel. You know, he put out a very, shall I say, some people are calling it an eye-opening tweet. Some people are calling it kind of a rude tweet. But he tweeted pretty much a few hours after the news broke that Sam Bradford is not coming to camp, saying that, hey, we just had a great day of camp where everybody's learning the offense. It's a great time. You know, do you think some of that was, you know, him being oblivious to the situation? Do you think he was actually just be like, hey, Sam, you're not here. I might take your job for you here?
Well, I'm sure Chase would be happy with that because he wants to be a starter in this league and he's never gotten an opportunity. He sort of might backdoor into it if this blows up because, again, the Eagles don't want to – the last thing they want to have to do is start Carson Wentz and have him play significant minutes in his rookie season. So in the case of if they do have to move Sam Bradford, it would be Chase Daniel's team this season. And I'm sure he would love the opportunity. But that's the one guy that he kind of knows his role. He's going to be the backup this year. He's going to be the backup next year. And he's going to be the backup in 2018. So whether he ultimately gets a chance to lead this team at any point due to a trade or injury is certainly a job that he's looking forward to and looking at the opportunity to prove himself at some point.
If we could turn our attention over to the NFL draft, John, I wanted to ask you, there's a lot of talk about who the Eagles may or may not pick. John Clayton says the Eagles are going to end up with Jared Goff. We know that Mike Mayock thinks that the Eagles are going to end up with Carson Wentz. It seems like no matter what, the Eagles are going to end up with a quarterback. But, John, what do the Eagles do after that top pick? Because they only have so many picks left in the draft.
Well, they go to sleep for about 10 hours. They don't pick again until number 79. But and let's say right off, Howie has already admitted he's not even playing Boyd. They're taking a quarterback. So basically, and the organization believes it's going to be Wentz. There's no question in their mind the Rams are going to take Goff, and they're going to take Wentz, and that's the guy they want. Now, they have to be comfortable with Goff if something changes in the Rams' mind. From that point forward, when Howie did his pre-draft press conference, he made it clear there's certain positions they need numbers at. On defense linebackers, they only have 6 linebackers. They got to bring in 1 or 2. They need a lot of help offensively at running back. They still need to get depth on the offensive line. They still need to add talent at the wide receiver position. So that's the part of it where you kind of mortgage your future. You give up all those picks, and you don't have the opportunity to fill all these holes. But their mentality is if you get the franchise quarterback, everything falls into place in the ensuing years. And I don't necessarily disagree with it, but clearly the Eagles don't have the ammunition in this year's draft to fill all their holes now.
No, and look, any team going after the number one or 2 or trying to draft a franchise quarterback, you're right. It's wishful thinking. At the very least, you get 5 to 7 years out of a rookie starter. And you brought up an interesting point that you certainly don't want to go to a rookie quarterback. I'll do you one better. The reason I don't think they're trading Sam Bradford is because you certainly don't want to stick a rookie head coach, start off his tenure with a rookie head coach. Because just argument's sake, devil's advocate, they trade Bradford, and right now they have set A or B quarterback, whether it's Wentz or Goff on the roster, guaranteed money, and you already have Chase Daniel. They start Chase Daniel, and then he goes down with an injury. Now, really, you're depleted. You have no depth. I think it's a bad spot to stick in a rookie head coach who, let's be honest, all these reports coming out of Kansas City was he wasn't calling as many plays as a lot of people thought he was. So, to me, and I don't know. Look, John, I said this a while ago. I would have let Bradford walk. I said this a while ago, and then you deal with it at that time. I think this is a complete mess because the last thing you want is a disruptive or disgruntled employee. I think it's a weak look if these reports are true that he wants out because he did sign that contract. And I said this during the 1 o'clock hour during my show. Look, the Philadelphia Eagles gave you a second career here. They gave you an opportunity to revitalize your career. You had those 7 games that everyone fell in love with to end the season. Now, what you do from there to work with is on you. So if I'm Bradford, I want to come out guns a-blazing. Give me the ball. Let me go under center. Let me win some games. Then we can talk about a contract, and I'll stick these kids in the back, and I won't worry about it. I don't think it's going to play out like that, though.
Yeah, I mean, logically, he should want to play because, he was on the market. So he's got to understand that the market wasn't huge for him. Despite those 7 games that you mentioned, he had a chance to look around. Tom Condon originally was talking about $25 million a year. That never materialized. He was only able to get a 2-year deal from the Eagles, which is really a glorified 1-year deal. And all of this tells you there wasn't a lot of demand for Sam Bradford around this league. And what does that mean? He's got to go back. He's got to play again. He's got to prove it. He's got to stay healthy, and he's got to play at a consistently high level if he wants to be a starter in this league again, whether it's in Philadelphia or any other city. So I think at the end of the day, that's Howie's mentality, is that Sam at some point is going to realize that for the sake of his own career, he needs to come back and play well. But counting on that, as you mentioned, we just saw the Carolina Panthers move on from Josh Norman. Why? They were concerned about chemistry issues. Well, you times that by 100 when you're talking about the quarterback of your team,
yep.
and that's the problem
yep.
the Philadelphia Eagles are dealing with.
Last one from me, and I know Josh has one more to close out. You're absolutely right, by the way. The Norman thing, talent is great, but personality, and if you're not buying into the system and they have a different philosophy like Carolina where they're not going to pay a DB and they want to invest in ends and linebackers, it doesn't matter how good you are. If your personality's not there, they're getting rid of you, and we saw that when they rescinded the tag on him. Do you think at all, this is the cynic right now, do you think at all Howie Roseman kind of stuck his chest out a little bit, got a little greedy, and said, you know what? I'm going to make that move to 2 because this is what Chip Kelly couldn't do last year.
I think he likes it, that he was able to do it and Chip wasn't. I think that was their plan. And, again, I think it comes from Jeffrey Lurie. I think he was ordered to try and get the franchise quarterback. So I think it comes from above him. But, yeah, that's just a fringe benefit of the fact that, yeah, Chip couldn't do it, and he was able to do it, and they don't like each other, so he feels good about that aspect of it.
John McMullen, our 97.3 ESPN.com insider, Eagles insider. John, one more question before we go, a little bit more NFL related. Josh Norman coming to the Redskins obviously is going to have an impact on the NFC East. I wanted to get your reaction to Norman, not just coming to the Redskins, but also Norman, almost all of his guaranteed money is in the first 2 years, John.
Yeah, I mean, that's what NFL contracts are today. And if you're a player, you want to get as much guaranteed money up front because that's all that's really guaranteed to you. And when you have those big money contracts, almost inevitably, those players don't see the back end of it, and you have to renegotiate at some point in the contract. And I think that's going to be the case in Washington. I've compared it to Byron Maxwell here last year, and while Norman is a much better player than that, I think he's going to undertake similar expectations in Washington, and he's not really a great press coverage corner. He's more of a zone corner that Carolina played so well. And I think the weight of those expectations is going to be difficult because the minute Des Bryant or somebody lights up that Washington secondary, what's the first question going to be? It's going to be, why isn't the big money corner shadowing Des Bryant?
Exactly.
That's not what he does well.
No. You're absolutely right. Hey, John, good stuff as always. There's a good article you just wrote, too, on 97.3 ESPN FM. Bradford demands trade, will not show up for future OTAs. Always some good takes. Appreciate you jumping on board. And I know, hey, it's a wild week. I know you and Mike will talk a lot more about the draft leading up to the draft on Thursday. I know you have a lot of great insight on that, but appreciate you joining us for a couple moments, pal.
Hey, thank you, guys.
John McMullen. Good article on 97.3 ESPN.com.